What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Make It Custom. I'm Carl Fisher, and today we are back in the 1939 Lincoln Zephyr Coupe conversion project. I'm going to show you guys my technique step by step on installing thin sheet metal panels for TIG welding. I personally believe that the welding is sort of the easiest part. It is how you fit them up that makes the welding easy. So we're going to run through that step by step, try and simplify it, make it really digestible for you guys. That's what this video's aim is. So don't forget to like, click subscribe, hit notifications. Let's get into it. All right, so in the last video I made that body line. We used the bead roller, made some bead roll dies for it, and some trial and error, and we came up with a piece that I'm quite happy with. These are the pieces that we are going to be installing. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm just going to quickly make, I say quickly, it's going to take me a while, but in the video it's going to be quick. I'm going to make this panel and this body line for the other side. I find that I'm just personally more efficient and I get more done if I've got more things to weld at once, more things to fit at once. So what I'm going to do is just run through that quick, get the other side made. And because it's going to be quick, I'm just going to explain it first. Obviously this body line, you can just go to the last video. A while ago I made this panel. This was a panel that I struggled on and I learned a lot making it. So now I think I have a better understanding and I won't make so much scrap. To make a slow crown like this, it's actually, for me, it's more tough than making something harsher like this. To do a slow crown, you have to just be very consistent. You have to be very methodical in the way that you roll. So the idea, and I see a lot of guys struggle with this, and I struggled with it myself quite a bit, is that I used to think, you know, you gotta roll the whole sheet, you know, but it's not really rolling the whole sheet to get the whole sheet to have a shape in it. You need to roll an area in the center, and that brings the center up a bit. And then you roll a larger area, crossing over the center again, a larger area like this, and it brings the whole thing up again. You need to stretch more in the center of a crown than you do on your way out. So there really is no rolling on these edges because there's not really much crown there. The crown's all happening by stretching the center out or wherever the center of your crown is. So that's something that was a hard lesson for me, so I want you guys to know that going into seeing the footage of me rolling this panel, because I'm just going to time lapse it, and you'll see that I'll probably draw a little mark on the center, and I'll roll the center, and then I'll draw a little bit mark bigger, and I'll roll it again, and just that's what I'm doing when I'm going back and checking and seeing how it is. So I'm probably going to pop this panel off and use it as a template because it'll be the same piece on the other side and just flip it around. But that's what I'm going to get going on. I'm going to make that crown piece, get it clecoed on the other side, then make this piece, and then we're going to get right into the fit up of these panels. I'm just going to interject for a second here and answer a question that I'm asked a lot in the comments, and that is the wheelbase of the Zephyr. This four-door car, yes, the wheelbase is the same as a coupe. And I know that's interesting because the car looks huge and there's a large space in between the door and the fender. But that is kind of why I love this car so much. It is a gigantic car that's unnecessarily large. And the 3-window coupe was only one bench seat. There was never a back seat. So this luxurious beast of a car that's actually really, really long was only ever meant for 2 people. Like that, and that tells you a little bit something about, like, you know, luxury is like you spent a bunch of money on a 12-cylinder car that was gigantic, that was just unnecessarily large. I guess it's like a status symbol of the day if you had the money to get a Zephyr coupe. Like, who, they made very few of them because even rich people had kids, you know? They'd have the 4-door car, right? So anyway, quick little, that's why. This is actually correct dimensionally. Like, you could park it next to a coupe and with any luck you wouldn't be able to tell when we're done. All right, so I just want to just kind of revisit this technique. This is a just like 1/8 welding rod, and what I'm doing is creating somewhat of a buck. And the reason this is important is because when we are checking the sheet metal shape against the car, we need to have the support in behind it so that the sheet metal actually gives us an accurate representation of how it's progressing. If you don't have the support around the border and the center to know how far out the sheet metal needs to grow, then we won't be able to accurately check it and see our progress. So this wireframe is something that's easy to do. Anybody can do it. And you know, traditionally in the past, a lot of metal shapers used you know, not wire bucks. That's what this is. But like plywood forms and that sort of thing, you can do that as well. If you want to, you could cut pieces of plywood and make yourself, you know, the shape, and that's what you have to check it to. So there's no use making a panel without having a way to check it. That's what I'm doing right now. So I'm going to add a couple more bars to just strengthen it up, because you kind of want this strong. We're going to be pressing the sheet metal against it a bunch. So that's what I'm going to do next, is add a couple more stringers to this and make it just like this other side. So you can see what I did the last time. And I braced it to the bracing of the car as well, just to make it so that it's nice and sturdy, something that we can check. So I'm going to do that now, just add those couple more pieces, and then I will take a template and just start shaping the panel, and then we'll talk about that. Also forgot to mention, these pieces are what I've been using to check my profile. This is a piece of aluminum bar that I made my own gauge of the outside of the body of the car before I cut it apart. So this has been my checking tool to make sure that, you know, the doors had the right amount of crown when they got welded together, and that the you know, wire buck that I'm making is the right shape. So that's what that is. And then the other one, the shorter one, is a vertical representation of the same thing. This is basically just a line on the car to get the shape of the vertical part of the car. So that's all very important. If you don't have that, then how will you know if it's the right shape or not? Anyway, yeah, shrinker stretcher is a very good tool to have, and they're relatively cheap. Like, I have really cheap ones, and that's, you know, a lifesaver. It's a great tool to have, because you're able to make those kinds of things. I use it for so many things. So yeah, little plug on shrinker stretchers. Okay, now I'm after it. All right, so we've made a little bit of progress on the quarter panel here, and I just kind of want to explain what I'm doing with the wheel, and I'm by no means an expert at this. I'm still learning, so take this for a grain of salt, I guess, if that's the saying. But why we have to have that wire buck. I'm going to show you how much shape is in here, and if you were just checking it to a table and not a car, you would think that there's maybe even too much shape. Let me show you. So if I press this flat down, and all the edges are flat when I'm doing this, right? You see the edges are flat to the table. Look at how much shape is in there, right? Like that's quite a bit, you know? And both ways, mind you. Put it to the edge of the table, show you the other way. There's, you know, shape both ways when I'm pressing it down. But if I'm gonna take this to the car, because it sits on the car at a curve in both ways, that is why it needs more shape than it looks like. So slip this in here, kind of close to could be. Okay, there it is. So, as you can see, or hopefully you can see, hold on. I'm gonna hold it backwards so that I can see what you're seeing, so that I know you're seeing what I'm seeing. So if I'm pressing it tight against my wire form in the center, you can see I still have, you know, a ways to go at the edges. You see there's a gap between the wire and the sheet metal here. Same thing on this side. There's still quite a bit. So where it's touching is where it needs more shape. So because it's touching in the center, it needs more in the center, you know, and you have to kind of feather it out. That's why we're doing, I call them clouds, you know. You do a center cloud, and then you do a bigger cloud and a bigger cloud, and every time you do a cloud, it overlaps the last one, so it stretches more in the center, you know, if you're doing multiple clouds. So that's what I'm working on right now, and that's why I've got it laid out on here with, you know, 1, 2, 3, and just kind of a grid pattern. And when I might not just go, you know, 1, 2, 3. I might go 1, 2, 3. That's what the grid is for. Just a visual representation, so that I've got something to look at when I'm wheeling, and I'm just creeping up on it. So wherever it's still touching, I'm just kind of growing those areas with more shape and checking it back onto the car and seeing where that wire touches. And that's another thing I wanted to say, is that the wire form is as nice as you can make it, as accurate as you can make it to the sweeps or whatever I made there to check the body. As accurate as you can make that, that's how accurate you can use it as a, you know, visual representation of the panel fitting. So I know I've butchered that, but yeah. The more picky you are, the better it'll be. All right, so moving right along with the shape here, and I've been just kind of coming back to the form and checking it on this wire buck and seeing where the shape is progressing and kind of how it's coming along. So as you can see, I'm getting there. I'm getting kind of close. The edges are mostly touching, you know, kind of all the way around in the bottom half of the panel. I'm pretty happy with it. You see when I'm pressing it against the form on the car, I've got, you know, nice shape around the wires and the edges are down. I can't say the same for the top yet. That is where I'm working currently. So I've got a little bit more that needs to come down, and you can see how the center here touches first before I can touch the edges down. That's kind of what I'm looking for when I'm checking against the wire form, is that, you know, where is it touching first, because that's the area that will need more stretching with the wheel to bring that area out, right? That's how we're adding the crown into the panels. We're wheeling an area and it's stretching it like a bubble and pushing it out. So the next spot I'm gonna work is kind of in this area. Like I'll do probably a pass in a center cloud and then a little bit larger and a little bit larger to the edges. And that's gonna be the next part, and I'll probably do a light wheeling over all of it just to try and smooth everything out as well. By all means, I'm not saying this is the exact way that everybody should do it, because I'm not really classically trained, but this is how I'm working through this shape. Well, I'm gonna show you something. Here is why it really, I don't know how I made this mistake, but I'm gonna show you guys. You know how I was saying that the other side looks like it has less shape? Well, the buck on this side actually has too much shape in it. I'm not sure where I went wrong, but this right here where I was saying needs more actually is too far out by about 1/8 of an inch. So if I line up my jig here, this touches in the center first, which it should not. And I have 1/8 of an inch gap here and about 1/8 of an inch gap here. So that is kind of not okay. And that could be about where the panel's at. So the panel could be totally fine because it needs more shape to match this, but this has too much shape. So I think what I'm gonna have to do is cut free this wire from the edges and try and correct that, because I don't know. Yeah, I'm gonna have to do something. I might have to just cut this right out and just try clecoing the panel right to the outside and then checking it with the gauge then. Anyway, I'm gonna get to the bottom of this. That's the it's fine up here, looks like, actually. Yeah, I'm gonna figure it out. getting close. So I did actually sink this in a bit. You saw that. I just used the actual gauge, the body gauge that I made, to press against it as I tacked it. And that definitely helped, and it kind of got the panel further along at the same time. But what I've been working out right now is a little bit of overshaping that I did up here. So what I was doing is just kind of like running out the edges, but I've got it sitting pretty dang good. Like at this point, you know, I'm not forcing it anywhere, but kind of just holding it on with my belly. And I'm looking good from here all the way down, all the way around, all the way up this side, right to the top, all the way across the top. And I've got just a little bit right here that still needs to come in. And that is what I'm kind of working on, because right now you can tell it's really tight here. When I press this down, it's affecting that. So I think it's just in my edge. That's all it is. I don't think it's any more shape in the center. I think I just have to calm this edge down, and then we're fitting nice. And I believe this panel's a nicer panel than the last one. So got to contend with this first before I call it done. All right, so we got that piece clecoed on there. I'm pretty happy with it. It's you know, a personal best, but I know that there's, you know, it's not quite right. There's a little bit of over shrinking in this spot. I went to the cake shrinker for no good reason, and I had to undo some of it in a couple of spots, but there's the other spot. But for the most part, it's pretty good. Like I'm really happy with it. I think that and I'm ready to move on for now. I'll probably try and stretch that little spot out in the wheel. I don't know if you guys can see where it's kind of diving right in there. Let me see. Maybe you can see it, just right there. Not a big deal. I'm gonna do that later. But for now, I'm just gonna move on to making this body line on this side. I'm gonna do the exact same thing as I did in the last video. So like I said, I'm just gonna kind of burn through it. Once that is in place, then we're gonna start fitting these panels and kind of doing the fine tuning that I think is very necessary to TIG welding sheet metal, is like how you line it up, and like you kind of got to be picky, and you want, you know, less than the blade width of like a thin saw blade, like as your tolerance, like as tight as they can be. That's the best for TIG welding, because you can be really consistent that way, and you're not burning holes and opening up the gap and stuff like that. So that's what we're gonna do once I get that body line on there. So I'm gonna do that right now. bead roller, shrinker stretcher, and the English wheel. Make a new body line for the driver's side. right, so body line is on there, looking good, nice and smooth, and just like the other side, flows right into the back. Yeah, super happy with it. So I did actually off camera just take care of this like I was talking about. I just kind of stretched this one little area here and flatten that out so that you can see it's got a nice flow the whole way down, kinda. Yeah, check out that panel. It's got, you know, little imperfections in it. There's a couple of track marks on the wheel, but, you know, I'm not perfect, neither is the panel. But I'm moving on. I'm happy with it. I think that what's next is tipping the bottom of this sheet has to be tipped in so that it can attach to the sill on the inside. Because right now it's kind of just shoved into this like little void between this piece and the sill. So here it is on the inside. There's the sill here. Somebody's replaced that at one time. But anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark the sheet, and then I'm going to tip a flange. So like the bottom of the sheet I'm going to call the flange. I'm just going to like tip it in until it lines up and can weld to this sill. I think that's just a good way to attach it at the bottom. The outside, you'll end up seeing this get tipped in, but because this car has this piece, we're just going to talk about this for a second. This is a like hidden running board is what they call it. So it's attached to the door and it swings out to reveal like a rubber running board underneath. Now that is what would be here. I have them. But because it was a four-door, it had one, you know, here as well that came out and over. So we're going to have to weld that piece into this skin, and then part of the piece of the back door will get welded to extend this one to here. I still want to have them attached to the door and open like how a factory one would. Some guys will weld these in solid and then just let the door open above them. That's cool too, but I think I'm going to do them factory style. So anyway, that's what's going to cover up the bottom once we tip this lip in. So I'm going to work on that next. And then we're just basically going to clean up all the edges and fine-tune anything that needs to be fine-tuned. And then we're going to start scribing out and fitting the panels to be welded. Now that I tipped that edge on, you can see that it's kind of straightened out the panel here, so I'm gonna have to shrink this a little bit to give that contour back, but that's just 3 times through with just the tipping die. And when I say tipping die, I just have the flat die on the bottom and just a disc basically on top. Like if you have your own bead roller, like you could make these pretty easily out of like a washer and just a piece of bar, you know. But anyway, that's all the tipping is for the edge. I'm gonna have to shrink that a little bit, and yeah, gonna do the other side and get that shrunk. All right, so got the bottom tipped in, that little flange there. Now you can see that instead of just jamming right down here, it's nicely flanged off. I'll show you what it looks like on the inside. Yeah, I'm really happy with it. I think it looks good. The flange landed nice and flat on the sill, and yeah, a little bit of shrinking, and that was about it. Back and forth with the hammer and dolly a little bit just to smooth the flange out itself. Tipping is really a simple thing to do, especially if you've got a bead roller. You know, you can just add a little bit of pressure up and keep rolling it through until it slowly forms this edge, and that's as simple as it is. If there's a curve one way or another, you'll have to shrink or stretch the flange to line everything back up, but that's all it is. So yeah, happy with that. I'm gonna go on to the other side, do the exact same thing. All right, so got the flange turned on the bottom of the passenger side. What I was saying about this skin is I feel like when I actually made this skin, it wasn't quite there, and that skin turned out to be an even better fitting skin than this one was. So I want to show you guys what I'm noticing on here now, is that I believe that there's not quite enough crown right in the center of the panel, and this is evidenced by, you see how tight the panel is to our wire right here? Like right there, it's touching. That's right in the middle. You see how it's off here, and when I press on it, kind of pops in and creates a bump down here. So that is because there's not quite enough crown in the center. So what I'm going to do is pop this panel off, add a little bit more with the wheel in the center till these edges kind of calm down a little and we get it to fit a little nicer. This is all in preparation to TIG weld it, because if there's things like this, and if you try and just weld that in, even though there's, you know, some of this in it, you can get it in there, but now you're putting that tension into the panel, and you'll be fighting it and collecting it and all that. So you want your seams to kind of be nice and tight, so that they're, like, if there's a wrinkle on this top seam like there is there, that means that that edge is actually technically longer than the material underneath it, because it has to collect, right? So by bringing the crown out a little bit, it will settle these down. It'll kind of expand it, and it'll settle it down. So I'm gonna do that now. Once that's done, I think we're there as far as any metal shaping goes, any forming goes. I think as soon as I've got this tuned up a little bit better, then I'm just gonna go right ahead and start prepping all the areas, like I was saying, getting any of the tar off of any of the back sides of the seams for welding, any of the paint off the outside of the body, all the way around. I'll prep underneath the flange, same thing as here. We've got that flange going to the sill. That's gonna be nice. We'll be able to just kind of press it down and maybe do some plug welds in that flange. Yeah, and then we'll butt weld the rest of it. So we'll get into that as soon as I tune this panel up and clean up the areas that we're going to be welding. Well, I know this video hasn't been much of a welding video. To be honest, I'm just learning so much every time I touch this panel and try and make it better. It's getting a little bit better. You know, further past what I thought I was capable of as far as like fine tuning the panel. Every time I go to my gauge here and see kind of, you know, where it's at and where I'm at, and I'm able to just keep fine tuning it. Like I'll be able, like that's almost nothing in there, but I could get that out, you know? So every time I go back to this panel and I pop it off and I, you know, mark a spot to work on, it is getting a little bit better. And that's why, you know, I haven't gone to weld it in yet, is because I'm just learning a lot. The basic concept is that it's just so important to have these gauges, because this, like, there's no other way to know where the panel is at. Even though we have, you know, our wire templates on the back side here, and those are all great, but they're not as accurate as this, right? So I'm able to check, you know, I made this based on the body, right? But before we took it all apart, I made these gauges to get the profile, and being able to check that in the middle and see that I'm a little bit low in an area, and then go back to the wheel and work on that area. And every time I go back and work on something like this, like right now it's just a little bit low here. I've been slowly getting it out by checking it with the gauge and going back to the wheel. So I'll start with an area a little bit, you know, kind of small like this, and I'll run over it, and then I'll do a slightly larger area and run over that, and then do a slightly larger area, and that's just kind of bringing that shape out and smoothing it in to the rest of the panel. That's kind of how it's working, and basically what I'm learning. Like I said, guys, I'm not a professional at doing these large panels. You know, like this is kind of new for me, so trying to pass on the experience as much as I can through this video. So this is, I think, going to be a part 1, part 2 type thing, because it's obviously taking me much longer to get these panels ready to weld in. Like, we haven't even started prepping them yet. So I guess that's, I'm going to change the title and you guys won't have known, because, you know, you would have already seen the change title of this being an English wheel and kind of fitting video as well. Anyway, I'm learning a lot, so I'm just going to keep going with the flow here. I'm going to take this just a little bit further. It's so close. Like, I've been working on it for quite a while, and it's just so close, and it just keeps getting better and better. Every time I put it on, the clecos fit nicer. I don't have to press my body on the panel. Like, the panel just kind of wants to fit on better and better every time. So I'm just going to take that all away, try and make it as good as I can get it, and then we'll start fitting it and welding it. All right, so this is where I'm gonna cut this video off because it's running long, and I left it kind of long, so hopefully you guys can watch it, and I feel like you can see what I'm doing to the panels by watching, you know, wheeling them out and that repetition. I hope that sort of sinks in. That's why I kind of left it long, because I think there's something to be learned by just seeing me struggle. Anyway, I'm starting to get the hang of it. I'm really excited with the progress on the Zephyr. There's a lot more to come with this car, and I can't wait to get the chop line put on and start metal shaping the rest of it. I feel like I have, you know, a little bit better grasp on making these slow curves in these low crown panels now that I've worked on both these quarters and tried to, you know, keep making them a little better and a little bit better. Yeah, the next video on the Zephyr next week, that is gonna come out and be welding in these panels. I promise that's what I'm gonna work on. Also, if you guys wanted to be in the metal shaping workshop in Vegas in January, it filled up right away, and there was enough interest that we're gonna do another class in February now. So Christian Sosa, Sosa Metalworks, and myself will be in Vegas at Christian Sosa's shop, and he's got multiple power hammers. This is where I took my first big metal shaping course. It's like just a wicked weekend. It's like Thursday night, meet and greet. We all have tacos, beer, get to know everybody's names, kind of talk about the weekend, what we're gonna do. Then there's Friday all day, Saturday all day, and Sunday all day. So you have 3 full, super long days of metal shaping to absorb, and it's just awesome. The second class that's in February is already filling up from overages from the January class. So if you want to get in on it, I think there's like 6 or 8 spots left. Jump in on it. It's in the description. Thanks a lot, everybody. Really appreciate you guys. Don't forget to like, click subscribe, hit notifications. And if you want to be part of the custom crew, that membership is $5 a month. You get a little badge by your name, become a little bit more searchable in the comments, and also you get a 15% discount off at the merch store, which is japhandskustoms.com. Hats, t-shirts, hoodies, keychains, stickers, air fresheners. Anyway, really appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for watching and supporting the channel. It all means a lot to me. So have a great one, everybody. We'll catch you on the next one.